Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brew Thoughts podcast. This is German coming to you on this Friday, and we want to do a a sports boxing pod to start the year. It's January 14, and David's here with me. We're gonna set the table for the rest of the year because we have I think this is the first real post pandemic year for boxing. And I say that not that the pandemic is over, but we're certainly sports is not affected by the pandemic as you see packed stadiums and all that across the USA. So um let's start here. We have the biggest story that broke this week is Terrence Crawford coming after Bob Arum and Top Rank in accusing them of discrimination, racism. Uh, he's accusing them of that they treat the white fighters and the Latino fighters better than they do the black fighters. And that bombshell came out, and I read it. I read the accusations, and I'll be honest with you, it didn't make sense to me because that he's doing this now because he's a free agent. He fought his last fight under Top Rank with with Sean Porter last year, and I thought, okay, he's a free agent. He's gonna go somewhere else and whatever. And now he has this lawsuit, and that means he's not gonna be able to fight until he gets this cleared. And so I don't know. What were your thoughts about that? What were your thoughts about Crawford and Aram and all the big words that he used? Because those are very, especially in the climate we live in now. You throw the discrimination and racism word out there, and it gets problematic real fast.
Yeah, man. I think I think you mentioned it. The timing, it's just like, bro, why now? But
Yeah,
at the same time, I mean, if you go back a few months, I don't know. I feel like Butts pulled the race card before, especially when he spoke about Canelo, about like ducking black fighters, and it's like, I don't know. It just kind of, I just see Bob Arum having like the money issue with Bud, and it's like, I don't know, it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense.
yeah, yeah. Because Terrence Crawford, he's a really good fighter, but he doesn't sell himself. And so that's a huge problem in the sport. And we've talked about it before with Terrence Crawford. It's a huge problem for him because you need that in especially in the sport um of boxing, where it's all about salesmanship. It's why you get the UFC, those guys are, you see the craziest dudes in the intros because
Oh
they
yeah,
know that that's what sells money. So you get,
yeah,
you get that because they understand that's how they're going to stay in, people to care. And Terrence Crawford has not done that. He's 34 years old, which was another thing that I was surprised because I thought he was younger. I don't know why I thought he was with Canelo and Errol Spence. I don't know why I thought he was, right in his peak. He's 34. He's closer to the end than he is to the peak at this point in his career. So I don't I don't understand his rationale, especially his persona has always been about fighting. And he's always said, I just want to fight. I don't really care about interviews, yada yada yada. Which is fine. But then you'll find yourself in the situation like Boo Boo, where nobody cares and nobody wants to watch you. So now you gotta get people to care for you.
hmm
This ain't it. This lawsuit is not how you get people to care about you, because all this does, and we've seen it in boxing over and over again with these guys that try to sue their promotion. All the only thing that does is put a hold on your career. And at 34 years old, I don't think this is the time where Terrence wants to have a stop in his career. I just don't think that's the wise move for him personally.
Yeah. What are the odds that this? I mean, obviously, I'm not a lawyer, but what are the odds of this being like kind of like a like they both get dragged through the mud? I'm thinking about like did Maggie Garcia kind of have like lawsuit issues with like contract disputes and Andre Ward as well,
Hmm.
and it kind of ate up a little, not a bit. I wouldn't say a big chunk, but like a sizable chunk of time. And like you said, he's 34, and it's like that's why like the timing thing. It's like was this like if you're like 24, 25, like if you're Ryan Garcia, I mean, sure you got
Yeah,
time, but if you're 34, like you said, I think 35 is kind of like the for for the average fighter. I'd say it's like the beginning of the end, and it kind of depends on how well you take care of yourself and your boxing IQ to prolong that the cliff, if you will. Shout out to Max Kellerman, but yeah, yeah, he's 34, man. I didn't realize that either. I was just like, oh yeah, he's I thought he was like maybe 31, 32.
yeah,
But I'm like 34, probably gonna be 35 soon, I think. So it's like, yeah, man.
yeah. And he's a free agent too, which is another like point to that. Like it's not like he has four more fights and he's doing this to get out of contract, which would make sense. But he's a free agent. You could just leave if the dude is treating you the way you say he is, which I totally disagree, because Stevenson has been a big star there. So I don't know what he's talking about, but um, I think it's one of those things that you are a free agent. It makes no sense for you to want to get involved legally with
A
your
guy
now
like that.
former
Yeah.
promotion. It just makes zero sense. It would make sense for um when Canelo did it, even Ryan Garcia if he were to do it, because
Right.
you're still under contract and you're trying to get away from that. You're trying to leave that contract
Hmm.
to be on your own. But the problem with Terence Crawford is Terence Crawford doesn't have the selling ability of a Ryan Garcia,
Hmm.
much less a Canelo. But we just put him with a Ryan Garcia. He doesn't sell himself like that. So he needs a promotional team. He does. He needs somebody to sell fights, because even Triple G understood that. Triple G would fight with Laker colors, would fight in Los Angeles, and would promote himself as the Mexican style fighter because he knew that's sold seats, that sold
Oh yeah.
tickets.
Hmm.
So Crawford does none of that, and I just to me it comes down to this lawsuit. Obviously, they're both gonna take a hit. I think you're gonna get those that hate Bob Arum and are just gonna be on his side and are gonna be on the side of Crawford, and you're gonna get the woke crowd that's gonna be all about the all about race and all of that, and then you're gonna get the boxing fan who just wants to see this guy fight, and it's business is business. And I think to accuse Bob Arum, who's been in the sport of boxing for a long time, who's been promoting he promoted Ali and several other great black fighters. I think to accuse him of this is such a mistake, because to me it certainly isn't true. I never felt like Terence Crawford was put to the side. If anything, I felt like he himself put himself to the side with his lack of personality, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Well, one thing I want to, so I think Bob Arum, obviously none of us know him personally. He's a hard man to reach, but I think he also understands that even if, let's say he, for example, let's say he did have certain biases, um, he understands the game and he knows that
Mm,
like the financial side of things.
yeah.
So let's say he is right because he probably lives in some mansion somewhere,
Hmm.
but he knows. if this particular guy just isn't bringing in the money that I need, that he says he can bring in, then it's like he knows, well, I just got to get rid of this guy, or he's hard to promote and this and this.
Mhm.
Um,
Which has happened. Bob Arum
right.
said of Terrence Crawford, no, with the with the fights I promoted, I could have built a big old
Yeah, built
house
a
in
house.
Bel
Yeah,
Air or
yeah,
something like that. So that's been brewing too, where I think you
the
saw the
frustration.
frustration from Bob
Yeah,
Arum, like, dude, like you gotta sell tickets.
yeah.
So you do get that from that side too, where um I think the only loser here is Terrence Crawford.
Oh yeah,
Because his career stops. Bob Arum isn't fighting. Bob Arum isn't gonna stop promoting fights because he has this thing on the side with Terrence Crawford.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, he's been doing that up until now. Is he only like in his 90s? I think.
Yeah, he's old. He's crazy old.
Yeah, yeah. It's I was telling my buddy, I was like, you'd think at this point he want to like let someone else like take the reins, but it's like that guy, he's gonna be promoting fights till he drops, But at this point,
Yeah, it's interesting. Um, it's interesting how you get there is this new, um, not this new. He reminds me of he's like the older people that still work, but they work not because they have to, but they work because that's all they know.
oh yeah,
You
no, yeah.
know,
My dad has coworkers that are like they're retired and they collect, but they still have like a full time job, and it's like what are you just saving that up, sitting on it? And they just they just that's all they know to work. Yeah,
and so it's one of those. You saw that with the coach from Penn State, the old coach from Penn State,
Joe Paterno.
Paterno.
Yeah,
As soon as he was fired, he died within a few months or so because that's all he knew. All he knew was coaching. All he knew was work. And Bob Arum reminds me of those type of guys. That he could leave it. He could just have some other guy run it. Um,
yeah. I mean, does he have kids? He's got to have some kids.
I'm pretty sure.
And I'm sure they're not. I mean, they're not. I'm sure they're not any spring chicken either. But I'm assuming he's got to have like a 40 or something year old kid, like a son.
Yeah,
And you think, if I'm Bob Arum, I'm like I sit back and like teach Junior how to run the company, and I just sit back. But yeah, it's like he's there talking to all the media and answering questions, and I'm like,
yeah. He still pops out on podcasts and he's still promoting
yeah,
fights and yeah, he's such a just one of the like because you get Don King who's awful, and then you get Bob Arum who's at least classier
right,
than Don King, and you get the sense of just the boxing the history of boxing every time Bob Arum speaks is there with him,
yeah,
which is obviously incredible as a fan to be able to hear somebody give you insights on just all these fights that he's been part of
right,
and so I wish Terrence Crawford drops his case and I wish he would just focus on fighting and making somehow the Terrence Crawford Errol Spence fight happen because that needs to be his goal, not
right,
Bob Arum. Bob
yeah,
Arum is not the fight that you want right now. That's not the fight
yeah.
you need. Absolutely not. Let's get into Benavides. Benavides he's an interesting guy. He records an interview where he comes off very humble, comes off very good, and he says how um, Canelo's fighting champions, and he knows he's got to wait his turn. And then he comes out days later, and then he says Canelo needs to either vacate or he needs to fight me. Um, and so this is where we're at. I think this is where we're going to be at the sport of boxing until Canelo um, loses or retires, where everyone's going to want a piece. Everyone's going to think that their necks. The famous, and obviously the response by most people is going to be Canelo's famous response to Boo Boo, payday,
Like
payday,
payday, you want payday, yeah.
and I think that's partly true because I'm sure these guys look at the numbers and see, well, I do need that payday. I'm sure people, talk to Caleb Plan and
Billy
realize like,
Joe,
hey,
yeah.
these guys made out pretty good. Billy Joe was able to retire and he's happy.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think of the whole Benavidez calling out Canelo and just that whole cluster? Because it's not just Benavidez, it's Charlo, it's Boo Boo, it's Triple G. Um, you're getting the dudes at 175 now starting to call him out.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I just let's back it up a little bit. So last month, I'm assuming the Eddie Reynoso, his trainer in front of the WBC, asks for a title shot against a cruiserweight champion.
Mhm.
And there are people that are legitimately saying, oh, of course he wants to fight a cruiserweight. He's ducking Benavidez. I'm like, you're telling me this guy's so scared of a contender at 168 that he's going to go up and fight a 200-pound man. That just, I don't, that doesn't make any sense. It'd be one thing if Canelo was picking off uh, like light middleweights to fight, which
Yeah.
like what, sure, that was the case a few years ago, but since then he's fought 175, he just undisputed at 168. But yeah, sure. Do I want to see that fight? I mean, yeah, you know, um, but I, from the get go, I've been saying these guys just got to start fighting each other, man, because there's no the either that or I mean, some people are saying Benavidez, if you really want that shot against Canelo, maybe just go get a belt at 175,
Mm.
and see, because I don't think Canelo's gonna. I think he just wants to win a belt, a cruiser, and then I think he goes to 175. Um, and maybe he goes back down to
You
168. I
think
don't know.
you think he tries to unify 175?
I think in the all right, let's say he fights either at cruiserweight or at 168. I think in the meantime, the champions at 175 fight each other. So we get Bivol, Beterbiev, um,
Which he didn't look
Smith.
good in his last fight. Just
What's up?
he didn't look good in his last fight.
Who? Beterbiev.
Yeah, that guy would get rocked by Canelo. But
Well, I
anyway,
mean,
keep
and
going.
he's a little older too. I think
Yeah.
he's like 35, 36.
Hmm.
So I think Canelo either fights someone at cruiserweight or let's say he fights because they're already saying Charlo 168. While that's going on, I think these champs fight each other at 175, and then let's say you have two champions with like maybe like two belts apiece, um, and then Canelo fights one of them to collect two belts at 175, and then so I think he wants to take less fights at 175, but he wants them to kind of clear themselves out and then fight whoever has
Oh, I
a
see.
majority or multiple belts.
I
You know what I
see.
mean? Because then you have like Surdo Ramirez too,
Yeah.
that wants Bivol,
Yeah.
and you have like a big Mexican showdown. Um, I think that might be the path to undisputed at 175 if Canelo does want to do that now. At this point, I mean, I think he just messes around with the cruiserweight thing and see how he feels. I'm assuming he'd weigh in at like 185.
That's what he said. He said he wouldn't weigh more than 190.
Yeah. So and then he just fights, whoever the cruiserweight, whether it's Makabu or the guy Makabu has to fight, and see how he feels. And then if Canelo feels like okay, then he's like, all right, I can fight at light heavyweight and feel decent, or he fights Charlie, So I think he's like kind of like it's like a running back waiting for a lane or a hole to develop in the running game. I think he's just kind of waiting to see at this, and he can wait because he just fought, 4 times in a year, basically. So when I hear Benavidez saying like, "Yeah, defender vacates," dude, he can do whatever he wants. Like as he's told the WBC, they're the reporter. He's like, "I can do whatever I want, man. I just fought some pretty good champions. Um, I thought Caleb Plant put up a good fight. It's funny. I expected the fights that Billy Joe and Caleb gave. I expected the opposite from what they gave. So I thought Billy Joe was gonna have put up a better fight and kind of drag out the fight a little more. And I thought Caleb
Mm,
get crushed.
yeah.
It ended up being the other way around, where Caleb fought a little more disciplined, was still slick, and Billy Joe was just kind of out there, hoping to get lucky and ducking and weaving, and gets caught with that beautiful uppercut. But yeah, he's Canelo's in an interesting place, and so to hear these little comments from Benavidez, it's like, well, okay, who have you fought, bro? Like, Ronald Ellis, Kyron David, one of the Durrell brothers. Like, that's
Yeah.
cool.
This is where I think, not that Canelo's bad for the sport of boxing. I don't want to. I don't want to. That's a hot take. I don't want to do that. But Canelo has stopped the business of boxing for sure, because nobody wants to fight each other. Everybody wants to fight him. And I
Mhm.
think in the past we would have seen Benavidez fight the Charlos and almost like an elimination style.
Right.
And now these guys refuse to fight each other because they want to fight the main guy. And
Mm-hmm.
after they fight the main guy, they've kind of just take the money and run away, which is awful, but also just exposes what they're there for.
True.
And I think this is the part of the sport right now that I don't like, because you see it also you saw it in the heavyweight division too, where for a while the three dudes didn't want to fight each other. They didn't want to touch each other, and they were fighting the same guys, for the most part, in Fury, Wilder, and Joshua. They just didn't want to get in the ring with each other. And it just made no sense. And that's what you're getting with, Benavidez. And if Benavidez, Charlo, Boo Boo, if you want to throw him in there, Triple G, if these guys were to fight each other, you would get I think, a better build-up to a
Oh,
Canelo
yeah,
fight.
you'd get some great fights. Yeah.
And you would get the best of those guys, which is what we're used to. And Canelo went into 168 and he cleaned up the division, like, old school style. He fought the champions, took their belts, the whole thing. Um, I just think these guys are gonna have to start fighting somebody eventually. Caleb Plant a few days ago called out Charlo, and wants to get
Mix it
that
up with
fight
him.
going, which is good,
Yeah.
But
Take my money. Yeah, sure. I'll watch it.
um, I just don't understand what Benavidez expects Canelo to do, because Benavidez is not a known name. The Caleb Canelo fight sold like 800 pay-per-views. A lot of it was the good buildup. A lot of it was Canelo, the slap in the press conference that got everybody going.
Yeah.
Besides that, Caleb Plant was another guy who most people were like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Benavidez would be similar, because unless you're boxing, you're watching boxing all the time, you have no idea who Benavidez is. The
Yeah.
casual person isn't looking at Benavidez knockout videos. That's not what's happening.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I don't understand this. I mean, I do understand it because it's money, but
Their lottery ticket kind of mindset that they're just
yeah,
someone's
yes,
gonna get lucky.
exactly.
And
Like,
I think
I thought
yeah.
we're in this for the belts, guys.
Yeah.
But
And I don't think they I mean they're realizing it now, but when Eddie dropped that announcement that they wanted to challenge that cruiser, like, you heard some of the guys in the media like gasp, and it's like, okay, to the guys that want to fight Canelo at 160, 168, it's like, oh, you think now he's just gonna like choose? And it's like, no, Canelo's gonna find some other ridiculous thing to do. Like he's not gonna wait for you guys. Like
Yeah.
he'll just go and find any fight at 175 looks good for Canelo because he's tiny, and then cruiser. And if he wants, sure. Eventually, I think he will squeeze one of these guys in if they refuse to fight each other. But yeah, it'd be great to see. I've talked about this before, maybe not on record with you, but that's one thing that I like about the UFC over boxing, because it's just the one promotion, is that,
Yeah.
you have the champ and then the top 10 rankings per division, and those guys have to duke it out to get a title shot. And then, for example, like Colby Covington, for example, so he beat some contenders, and then if you lose your first attempt, well, there's more contenders to clean house with, and then you get a second title shot. But with these boxers, they're just sitting around fighting nobodies, and then they're like, all right, well, let's hope one of us gets the magic number, and that Canelo will, call on us to enter his palace, and get that red panty night kind of money, But yeah, and there's some good fights to be made, man. One fight that we didn't talk about, but it happened in between the break, was Rosado and Munguia.
Oh man,
that was good.
Mujia turned me into a believer after that fight.
I know. I saw your tweets, and I was like, who are you?
I'm all in on Mujia after that fight. He showed me everything. He showed me heart. He showed me all the questions that I had about Mujia. He answered those in that fight. And I was so happy to say that I was wrong about him, because I didn't think that fighter was in him. And Gabe Rosado brought it out, and I thought it was good. The only question I have now is, are we going to see that guy all the time, or is this just a Gabe Rosado brought it out one time?
Right, when he gets pushed that limit.
Yeah, which is going to be the key. Which is, if he's going to be great, he's going to have to show that every fight. If he's going to be average, then we'll see it when he fights somebody good. Yeah,
that's the frustrating part of boxing.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. And I think it doesn't help that you have all these belts. It doesn't help that you have all these rankings. Everybody has their rankings. The funniest one is ESPN. Every time ESPN has a ranking, not now, they fixed it, but for a while their ranking at number one was always one of their guys, one of the top ranked guys, like if Canelo was dead or something. And so that one always made me laugh, and I always tweeted at them whenever they would publish it, because it just made no sense at all.
Yeah, like, did Canelo retire or something?
Yeah, like, what is it like? Yeah, exactly. So, and it would help, but I think you also boxing has always been this way, and you used to have guys who used to love to fight. And I think that's right. This is how Mayweather changed the game for everybody. Up until Mayweather, everybody would fight each other. De La Hoya fought Mosley, and he fought Hopkins, and he fought Trinidad, and Trinidad fought all those guys. Like, they all fought each other. That whole group fought each other, and they brought up some amazing fights. So we don't even have to go that long ago. Like, we a lot of times when we talk about boxing when it was great, we want to go like 50 years. We don't have to go that long.
It's like, bro, Manny, look at Manny.
Exactly. We don't exactly. Manny fought all the crazy Mexicans in that circle.
More than once. Yeah,
exactly. So I just think, and those Mexicans fought each other.
Yeah, they each have like their own trilogy, their own little.
Yeah, like, and Barrera and Morales now have a great podcast. I love their podcast, but it's one of those things that you used to see these guys fight each other, and Mayweather changed it to where he was the biggest draw, and he would just pick. And all these guys wanted to be available for when Mayweather picked. Mm-hmm. And that's very unfortunate, because this is where we are now in the sport, a place of of just dudes waiting around for the lottery ticket. And
Yeah.
it's just sad. Benavidez is a talented dude who needs to fight. And um we'll see. I don't think Canelo's giving him a call. I think if he's gonna do anything, he's gonna fight Charlo. May the weekend of Cinco de Mayo. I think that's the route he takes.
Mm-hmm.
Which is funny because when that came out, you got a lot of people that accuse Canelo of being afraid to fight black fighters already had a built-in excuse for when Charlo loses. So it's like, well, which one is it? Is he afraid to fight black fighters, or
Yeah,
which one is
like
it? Pick one.
people just entered the chat. Like,
Yeah.
come on, man. Like,
So I think that's the fight he does. If he doesn't do something crazy, like go to 175 or 200, I can see him fighting Charlo because I think that generates. Charlo's a bigger name.
big
You
mouth. Yeah.
Yeah, you do get the whole. You Boxing is about communities,
Mm-hmm.
and Mexican fighters do good because they bring the Mexican community, and Charlo would bring the black community, and that is the truth of this whole thing. And so I think he would fight Charlo for financial reasons because I think that would make more sense.
Yeah, it'd be a good build-up too. I mean, I can
Yeah,
already see. Yeah, I mean, because anytime I hop on, YouTube or whatever, and um, I'll always see the thumbnails of whatever's going on with those guys, and I'm just like, pretty
yeah,
good build-up.
yeah. A lot of great interviews would come from that. This is where we would need the 24/7. This is where we would need the face off with Max Kellerman. Man, I miss those. I miss
Oh
that. I
yeah, like when
miss
they sit down. Yeah,
Yeah, I miss HBO. I miss HBO boxing.
yeah,
Shout
man.
out to those guys.
There's some
Um,
classics on there.
let's do. I do this reluctantly, but I feel like we have to do this. Um, so Jake Paul,
Here we go.
and I hate doing this because I hate to give that guy any.
Anytime,
Yeah, because
any kind of platform.
he's not a real guy. He's not a real fighter, and you know. Anyway, but Mannix, he's a real reporter, a real respected boxing reporter. And he's been defending Jake Paul like no one's business. Obviously, Jake Paul has been, and we have to say this, he's been successful for a celebrity because he has, the fights he's fighting are gimmick fights. He's fighting guys that are not real boxers. He wants to parade like he's 3 and 4, but this is celebrity. It's me playing a bunch of, I don't know, me playing horse jockeys at basketball and saying, hey, I'm 4-0 1-on-1, because I beat these horse jockeys. Like, okay, like, why don't you play a high school basketball player?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like, why don't you do that? And so his last fight, I think, came out to like he didn't do more than 500K, and
It was
which
even
is,
it was 65,000 buys, like not even 100,000.
yeah, there you go. Yeah, so
So
65K, which we have to put this in perspective. I think that's good for a celebrity. For a boxer, you might get dropped. You're
right,
the
yeah,
headliner and you can't even do 100K.
right.
And
So yeah, a little perspective, as Jim mentioned. So Canelo's last fight, which is for the undisputed title at 168, that was 800,000 pay-per-view buys,
mhm,
which is, uh, guys like Manny and Floyd and McGregor exist, and their events put on well over a million
yeah,
pay-per-view buys. So Canelo doing 800,000 against Caleb, who's not that known, that's pretty good, sure.
that's the
So
Canelo power.
right, and
Yeah.
so to not even hit 100,000, like as Germ said, like that'd be disgraceful. And sure, was Jake Paul supposed to fight Tommy Fury? Yeah, and it didn't happen, and so they called Tyron Woodley to get off the couch, and and you have the result that
Yeah, they gave him a Rolex and said, "Okay, now we can knock you out."
literally gave him a Rolex and said the man gave him a Rolex and knocked him out. So yeah, that's some perspective. 65,000 buys, and of course you have Jake Paul tweeting, "No, that's not accurate." It's like, then release the actual numbers. If you're saying there are actual better numbers,
Hmm.
then release those, because it's been how many weeks since the fight, and the
Yeah,
number I'm seeing is 65,000. It's probably 65,000.
and Showtime isn't denying it because that's who I look at. I don't look at the fighter. The fighter is going to tell me whatever. I look at the people who are in charge of making
Working
sure
for that
this
company,
fight
yes.
sells. And Showtime has said nothing. And that just tells you everything you need to know. So, I'm not a conspiracy theorist when in general, and especially when it comes to sports. I hate the dudes that are, oh, it's fixed, it's rigged. That fight, man, I don't know. I saw that knockout. I didn't see the fight, but I saw the knockout on like Instagram or whatever. And I was like, this is fixed. Like this is totally set up where he goes like this. Like this is whole, Michael B. Jordan
Creed,
in Creed type of
yeah.
stuff. This isn't real. Um, but you get Chris Mannix who's defending him. You get Chris Mannix who's saying you have to respect it. And um, what do you think about that? What do you think of, because Jake Paul is garnering a lot of respect from the boxing media, not the fighters themselves, but just the media and the dudes that are reputable, like a Chris Mannix, that are defending. What do you think about that?
Um, the word that comes to mind is sensationalism.
Mm.
In the sense that uh, you have a guy, and there have been, obviously boxers have weighed on this, UFC fighters as well, because they've kind of become the target for Jake Paul,
Yeah,
for the for the listeners that don't know what we're talking about. So Jake Paul's fought another fellow YouTuber. Then he fought Nate Robinson, retired NBA basketball player. And then he fought
super retired NBA guy. He hasn't
yeah,
played in years.
and then he fought Ben Askren, who was primarily a wrestler. He fought in the UFC for a time, but I wouldn't even call him a UFC star. I mean, the guy had what 2, 3 fights in the UFC after fighting in other organizations. And if you look at the guy, Ben Askren had better days. He's an Olympic wrestler, but he's a chunky fellow when he fought Jake Paul, and then he fights Tyron Woodley twice, who in striking, metrics, he is a better striker than Ben Askren, but Tyron Woodley also has a wrestling heavy background. So he wrestled collegiately. He just happened to be a wrestler that has pretty decent hands when it comes to striking. So these are the guys that he's fought. Mind you, they're all smaller than him as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, and so he puts on these big events. He has um, all these celebrities behind him. He puts on these great fights. One in Atlanta that he had with Ben Askren, and people like it. People like spectacles, and that's what I'm.
Yeah.
It's a spectacle. Which, if that's your intro to boxing, I mean, cool, have at it. But there is a major difference in the product you're watching Jake put on and versus guys like Canelo, top tier fighters, obviously, and even in the UFC. So Chris Mannix, I hear you. Sure, is he bringing eyes? Sure, but we've talked about this before. What kind of eyes is he bringing? Are these guys gonna tune into Chocolatito and Estrada for the trilogy? Do they even know
No.
exactly? So, and sure, does he put in some hard work to train? And yeah, and I would say it's pretty easy to do when you have the money to hire, you know, great coaches, great trainers, sparring partners. Sure. Um, but as far as boxing itself, like the craft, um, I mean, bro, just fight, you know, fight Anderson Silva at least. I mean, because he already wants to fight Chavez Jr. And I don't really have much faith in Chavez Jr. Chavez Jr. already lost to Anderson Silva in a boxing match. So it's like, what does that tell you about Chavez Jr.? And because you have so many
He
belts,
needs Coke money.
so Jake Paul's spin is now, oh, if I beat Chavez Jr., I beat a world champion. Sure, who did he beat to become world champion? You know, so, and like I said, he lost to Anderson. Anderson was, I'm pretty sure he's like 46. So it kind of tells you that a great striker in the UFC, an old striker, can defeat a mediocre boxer, so to speak.
See, but look, I think striking doesn't mean boxing, which I think it's the thing that a lot of people think it means, like just
Right,
because you're a good striker in the UFC doesn't mean that translates to boxing, because striking in the UFC is different than boxing.
right.
And there's that. The second thing, Chavez is a disgrace to call him a boxer is a disgrace,
Yes.
because every opportunity he has ever gotten in the sport of boxing is his last name. That's it.
Oh yeah.
If it's not, if Chavez was not, if his last name
Chavez.
was Ramirez, Robles, whatever, he would not be getting the opportunities he got. Especially that, when he trained with, or when he tried to train
Nacho
with
Baristan.
with him.
Yeah.
But before that, he tried training. Oh my gosh, I can't. Freddie Roach. He tried
Yeah.
training with Freddie Roach, and the reports from, and this was like, I think he had like a 24/7 type of thing. And Freddie Roach said how, like, the dude doesn't get up to run. He's not disciplined. He wakes up late. Any other fighter who's not connected to Chavez would have been dropped, and we would have never heard from him again.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a name. And this guy was legitimately great. He was great. Boring as hell, but he was great. Guillermo Rigondeaux.
Oh yeah.
Guillermo Rigondeaux is, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, take a whole day, because his fights are boring. But he's an amazing boxer, like just specifically boxer.
Hit,
The
not get
street
hit.
science, yes. He's boring. I always used to tell people I love watching Rigondeaux. People are like, well, he's boring. Like, yes, I do understand that. I just love the sweet science. So he did it great. But Rigondeaux fought a fight, and you go watch him against Nonito Nonair, and that's a great fight of his, because Nonito's like still like, we think he's at his peak, and he totally just like cuts him down to take away his belt. So, but he fights this fight in one of the Canelo undercards, and it's one of the ones the one he fights Cotto, where it was where they had like a concert in between the fight. It was a mess. But Rigondeaux has this fight, and Rigondeaux throws no punches. He throws very, very, very few. You haven't seen, Rigondeaux in any prominent thing since then. He had another fight, on ESPN or something like that after that, and it was the same type of thing. And after that, you didn't see him again. Why? Because his name is Guillermo Rigondeaux, not Guillermo Chavez.
Chavez Jr. Yeah, yeah.
So I think with Chavez, to me at least, when I think of Chavez, and when I see that he's potentially going to fight Jake Paul, and when I see that he's caught Canelo out at 175, fight me at my real weight, I just think like, man, like this is a dude who was born on third base, thought he hit a triple, and this dude just thinks he's the man. And meanwhile, everyone around him is just like, dude, you are a clown. So Jake Paul fights him. I have no doubts that Jake Paul beats him because Jake Paul at least is disciplined. I think that's the only thing as a boxing fan that
Right.
I can give credit to Paul is he's committed to it, which I
Right.
would be too. If I know I'm guaranteed to knock out some dudes and make millions of dollars, I'd be pretty committed too.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. But
I don't know. I just to me, I just don't like that the boxing media is giving these guys any shine because Jake Paul has enough shine already. He doesn't need Chris Mannix to do that. I think Chris Mannix needs to be pushing the sport. He needs to be talking about Haney. He needs to be talking about
Crawford and
um
Spence.
yeah, Ryan Garcia. I think everyone needs to I would much rather the zone and all these, ESPN and
All these outlets
online
and
all
organizations.
these outlets, yeah. I would rather that they pump Ryan Garcia to me because at least that's a challenge to Ryan Garcia to get back to fighting. But when I see that ESPN gave Jake Paul the knockout of the year, and I'm just like, what are you talking about? You had Valdez on your network. He fought on your network. The dude got the knockout of the year. What are we doing? So to me, I don't like that these boxing outlets are giving any credit to Jake Paul because he's not a boxer. He's a celebrity boxing, but he's not a boxer. And I think that's where we're at. But it's what you said. It's a sensationalism, and people want clout, people want clicks,
Yeah.
and
It's
that
clicks. It's
that's what
hits.
gets people going. And it's unfortunate. But that's where we're at. We don't know. I don't know who he plans to fight. I saw like a video on Twitter that he's like training at UFC.
I mean, the guy. I mean, the one thing the guy is great at is like generating the hype for these things.
Yeah,
So, if you'd said 3 years ago that this guy would be fighting, I mean, for crying out loud, he's talking about fighting Chavez Jr., which is like, what? If you would have shown, if you would have given me a glimpse into the future years ago and told me that this is what was going to be like discussed, I would have been like, what? Like, what happened here? What's going on? But yeah, he's calling all, he's talking to Jorge Masvidal, Chavez Jr., um, Tommy Fury, which I mean, I thought that fight would have been like, it's like, oh, you guys are made for each other. That fight, you have the half brother of the heavyweight champ who,
he's another Travis to me.
just another name exactly
Yeah,
versus the YouTuber who put some work into boxing and has willed himself into the sport, if you will, the very edge of the sport, might I add. I would have been like, oh cool, that's the spectacle for the kids to watch.
yeah.
So he's got his hand in all kinds of cookie jars, um and he's got Chris Mannix talking about, like you said, and it's crazy, man. It's crazy, and I have no words. I'm just like, what's going on? So
Yeah, I don't understand
did you hear
with
about Floyd's fight?
yeah, he's fighting, so he wants to fight some YouTuber, no?
I think he is a YouTuber, but he's basically this kid, his family is like filthy rich, and so
Oh,
like I'm talking like they're from Dubai, like they're just
oh,
they're
like they own a
swimming in it.
country rich.
Yeah, so if you tell Floyd, hey Floyd, basically what you're saying is I'll pay you a couple million to come play patty cake with my kid for
Mm,
15 minutes.
yeah.
And we all know Floyd. Floyd's like, I'll be there with refreshments and drinks in hand.
And
And
they're fighting on the top of the thing, no?
yeah, they're so it's just like it's like spectacle to the max.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see with that. But again, Floyd's always been about the money. So I'm not expecting from Floyd anything else. And I'll say this, and this pains me to say this. I don't see I see Canelo doing something similar when he retires.
Really?
It wouldn't shock me if Canelo retires and we start hearing him do stuff like that. It just wouldn't shock me because the guy who talks about wanting to have his name on everything, who wants to have Canelo gas stations and all that. You need to get your name out there somehow. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is the route Canelo takes after boxing. It wouldn't shock me one bit.
Wow. I hope you're wrong.
I hope so too. I just wouldn't be surprised.
I'm gonna
I just broke you.
bro, stop. Wait, hold on. There's a huge part of me that hopes that Canelo sticks to his word about just riding off into the sunset after he's done fighting. I'm sure you saw the Grant Bensinger interview where he says, and he said this before, but he's like, after I'm done fighting, he's like, I have no interest in like training, coaching, like no analyst stuff. Like, I think he just
I
wants to
believe
get
that's yeah. He says he doesn't even like watching
it is kind of sad, and so it would be very sad to see. Man, to be relevant, I just wish that Canelo would at least just like make some like ringside appearances and like comment on fights as opposed to doing this kind
But
of
he
thing.
said in that interview he doesn't even like watching boxing.
Yeah, but he likes money, so I hope the money and he
I know, but he would make more
money.
money the Jake Paul route than he would working for the zone. And Jake Paul's risk ratio is super low. Like, I mean, I guess Jake Paul could get knocked out, but he's not really gonna get knocked out.
I think that's coming eventually. I think the right guy is gonna come along that can put him away.
But you think they would allow that?
At some point, it's gonna have to end. So,
or maybe it doesn't. Maybe he wins 10 fights and says, you know what? I have another passion now. I'm walking away 10-0.
I think he'll either finally meet the wrong guy that's gonna put him away, or he's gonna stop fighting when it's like sure, if he reaches 10-0 and they were all safe fights against other wrestlers or grapplers or terrible boxers like Chavez, he could totally just I don't think he'll ever get that that satisfaction of having fought like an actual legit boxer.
See, but I don't think he's gonna need it because everyone's gonna treat him as such. Perception is reality. And I don't think he's gonna need. I think in the beginning we all thought he's gonna need a real fighter. If Chris Mannix is going to bat for you, you're not gonna need a real fighter. Because if you get Chavez in the ring, all you're gonna have to do is pump up Chavez's resume and say, well, he beat this guy.
I think Silva could be that guy. I think Silva's the mistake he's gonna make. Anderson Silva.
But you see, but those aren't those. I just feel like those contract negotiations are too too shady because they don't get
Oh,
released.
you think they're putting in like, yeah, you can't
I
knock out
think
Jake?
so, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Because there's no way that it just in a fight, any especially when two people don't know what they're doing, any crazy thing can happen. Any crazy thing. And like when I watched the McGregor Mayweather fight, Connor had no idea what he was doing, but he looked, to those that don't know about boxing, he was winning the fight because he was just like hovering. The dude just had no idea how to stand, how to do anything. That Mayweather was just taking his time because Mayweather needed to not to solve him, but he needed to
Wear
be
him down.
tactical. He needed to be tactical. He couldn't just go crazy because he was going to get hurt. In all of the Jake Paul fights, it's looked like a dance. I go this way, you go this way. I do this, you do that. I threw this, and it's a big old dance. It's a big practice dance. And boxing is not. That is not boxing. Boxing is two people trying to throw each other off the tempo. You want to make it's all of that, especially when two people don't know how to fight. You get even crazier results because you're leaving yourself open in ways that you didn't know. So I don't know. I am of the belief, after watching some of these fights, and I've never paid for them. I've watched them after the fact on like YouTube or whatever. Um, it looks too scripted for me.
I'm telling you, he's gonna the wrong dude is gonna sign on that line, and they're not gonna care about any contract. They're just gonna be like, I'm gonna take the
But
dude
then
that.
you don't get the money.
But the thing is, the guys that are signing up for this, they are well, I mean, some of that's what I'm saying. The picks are either gonna run out, dude, because if you, for example, let's say you take someone like Masvidal. Masvidal has sure, compared to like a prize fighter in boxing, he hasn't made much money. But for a guy from Miami who used to fight in dudes' backyards for McDonald's money, he's set in the UFC and he is another guy. So I think if Jake were to actually make a fight like that happen, Masvidal's not gonna. He's like, bro, I don't care about this contract. He's like, I've made enough money to send my kids to university. I have endorsements with the UFC and this and this and that. I think he would totally rip his head off because, like I said, these picks they're strategic. Like if you look at Tyron in that first fight, I'm like, that guy's not. He's like a C-level striker. Did you watch any of Tyron's last fights in the UFC?
Yeah.
They're pretty sad. Like
Mm-hmm.
they were just like. So to see him land a couple shots on Jake, I'm like, okay, if you were to put a young, the guy's the same size as Jake, like, bro, come on. We're talking about, trained I don't want to say killers, but dudes that actually know
Trained
how to throw
fighters.
hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, actual trained, because Ben Askren, like, that guy had like a beer belly going into that fight. It's like, come on. And Jake's 24. Like I said, he's got actual boxers like in his training camp. He's got like which again isn't saying much, but like Jalen Love, who's someone who's fought like a Benavidez. That guy's like in his camp. Montana Love, BJ Flores. So when you have that money, you can call guys to come and train you, and you can put in the work. But I think the wrong dude is gonna finally just Deontay Wilder status.
Yeah. I don't know. I
And
don't.
let me
I
say
don't.
that I hope it does happen. You hear that, Jake? What's up?
You
So
hear that, Jake? um, yeah. If you see this, Jake Paul, please retweet us. But I don't know, man. I think going back to the Canelo thing, I think he would get in there and do something like that. Speaking of a guy of a fighter who's getting bored with boxing, not the Canelo is, but Jake Paul is certainly with getting involved with the UFC. Fury wants to get involved with the UFC.
Oh yes,
and
yes.
he wants to fight the heavyweight from the UFC.
Francis Ngannou.
Yeah, and
Yes.
he said so. Francis Ngannou has one more fight, right, left
Yeah.
supposedly in his contract,
Hmm.
and then he said after this fight we can get it on, which would be crazy, right? And I think the thing is, depending on what rules they're using, because Fury said, "Let's fight boxing with UFC gloves," and then Ngannou said, "Well, why don't we do UFC with boxing gloves?"
Oh, Ngannou. Ngannou's such a he's a character.
And so I don't know. I mean, I think we're gonna see more and more of this because I think the money is there. People are willing to pay for it. I just want to see how long Dana White opposes it because he's super against this.
right, right.
So I just want to know, like, is there an amount that he finds us the hell with it? Because he did it with Mayweather and McGregor. It was too much money for him to not be part of.
Right.
I wonder if there is enough. What's the amount that he needs to hear that goes to him that he says, okay, I'll get behind this whole Jake Paul thing. I'll get behind the Fury thing. Because I don't know. I don't know what there has to
What
be
the
an amount.
right, right, the numbers. Yeah. Well, it's a little bit of an apples to oranges thing because obviously we've seen what's become of Connor now.
Mm-hmm.
Um and it's kind at at best it's like all right, he may or may not be done fighting, but it's like he's had some rough fights. If you wind the clock back 4 years ago, 5 years, um Connor had that company like
Yeah.
by the you know what's, man. Like he
Yeah.
was the guy. He was
Yeah. Hit him
talking,
by the nuts. Yeah.
he was talking crazy, but he was like, I want a piece of the company, man. I'm putting on astronomical numbers for this company. And as we've seen in boxing, if you are that guy, like Canelo said, I do what I want. I can do whatever I
Yeah.
want. And so for Dana, that's like, and you have a guy like Floyd, obviously. So you needed those two guys, those two iconic figures in their respective sport to want that. I don't think that's the case with Ngannou and Fury, but the interesting thing is that contract dispute with the UFC and with Francis, because Francis, it's easy to promote a guy like that because I don't know if you ever looked into the punching power, but it's like 90 something horsepower that he hits with. He hits like a small car.
Yeah.
Uh, and people love to see him fight. Maybe not on the level that they love to see a McGregor fight because he's not quite the showman that McGregor is. But I wonder if Dana's gonna let him slip away because of like a contract thing.
So where would a guy like that go?
There are other organizations that are putting on mixed martial arts events. You're starting to see them pop up. But the thing is that unlike boxing, they're not as popular as the
So that's
UFC.
what I mean, though. Like what? Like Francis Ngannou, wouldn't it make sense for him to leave?
I don't think there'd be anything after the let's say he gets the fight with Fury
Okay.
and it does, let's say it doesn't do well. I think he'd have to go crawling back to the UFC if they'd even have him. Because, like I said, I can name like one or two other MMA organizations,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not respected. They're not, the UFC gets away with saying world champion for their champions, even though there are other, like there's like Pride, there's Bellator, Cage Warriors, all that kind of stuff, but nobody ever talks about them. So yeah, I don't know if it's in his best interest to take that kind of risk with Fury, especially if he's gonna get like embarrassed. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then um I don't know.
Because that's the thing that I think of when I see like Ngannou say, "Oh, I got one more fight," but I just think like, well, would you want to leave the UFC? And I know the UFC gets like, criticized for, a bunch
Fighter
of the
pay.
fighter pay, fighter benefits, the whole thing. But I just think like, man, like until an organization comes along that rivals the UFC isn't going to change anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's the and I don't, according to what you're saying, Francis Ngannou is not the name who's going to shift the tide for some other promotional group from other, organization.
He's just not that big. I would
Yeah.
say he is a big name, but he's not
Yeah,
like
but he's not McGregor in his peak
right,
moving
right.
from UFC to Bellator.
Yeah.
Because that would have changed things. People would have demanded
Right.
Bellator and demanded to watch it and all that.
Right. Right. Yeah. He doesn't have that kind of pull yet. Like if you watch the UFC and you watch MMA, then you know the name Francis Ngannou. But other than that, it's like, well, who?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and MMA is so grueling because you get injured in so many ways. It's not like boxing where sparring is light. You're still going pretty rough in UFC sparring. That it's almost impossible to get a guy who's going to fight 4 times a year, 3 times a year, 2 times a year, because it's so demanding on the body.
Well, I would push back. The one thing that where they differ, boxing and the MMA thing, is that I think that because you have so many ways to win a fight, that there is less of a well, for example, in boxing, um, we've all seen the retired fighters that can't even walk,
Yeah,
can't even talk,
yeah.
can't remember the kids' names, right? I don't think that's going to be a thing with the UFC because
Really? Okay,
you
so you
because
get
you can
more
lose
of
fights by
the
submission, so you
so
might
you
not be
get
able to
more of
walk
the
again because
the football thing.
right, it's going to be like wear and tear on like your ligaments as opposed to
Yeah.
just your head. And there are guys that lose fights and they snap their ankle or their the ACL, MCL, and that kind of stuff. But you know you can lose a fight by submission, and you'll still have all your marbles. Um, so there are some guys, sure, there are some guys that fight twice a year, but some of these young guys they do fight 3, 4 times a year, and that's one of the things that there are some UFC fighters that kind of push back on the fighter pay thing, because you have guys that aren't McGregor, aren't Ngannou, and all right, you fought twice in a year and you made let's see, let's say you make $100,000 for those 2 fights, and it's like, well, I mean, maybe you could try to get 2 more fights. You got to stay active in the sport. So there are guys that are in the UFC that are fighting not as frequently as they should, and they're complaining about fighter pay. So, and
Mm,
this comes from check out. I'll send you a video of Kevin Holland. He's a funny guy. He's a UFC fighter, but he's like, hold on now. He's like, some of these guys complaining about fighter pay. It's like they fought once a year, and it's like, come on, bro. You got to show me a little more than that. If you want to show the company that you're worth that top dollar, then you know, put out some more fights, win the fights. Because there was a time when, like, before McGregor was huge, he was fighting pretty frequently, even before he was in the UFC. So you definitely, this is a sport where you can definitely work your way up, and it does behoove you to like, and you can fight those contenders. It's easy to get those contenders if you're actually beating the guys in front of you. Whereas in boxing, you kind of have like the prize cash cow. So there is like a solidified number 7, number 6, and you can, all right, I want to fight the number 7 guys. You beat number 7, then you get a fight with number 4 maybe, and then if your fights were exciting, hey, you can get a shot at the champ right then and there. So the whole fighter pay thing, is definitely a interesting.
so what is it? How much do they get paid? Like, why is it such a big topic?
Because the big guys, the champions in UFC, aren't making as much as a guy like Canelo. So I'm
But is that the expectation?
That's what I think people want to see. And so some of these
That's
guys,
not realistic.
exactly. Again, you take McGregor with for his last two fights with Poirier, he made, like, I think his base pay isn't that much, but with endorsements and pay-per-view, at least like 20 million plus for him. So you have that guy making all that money, and then you have Kamaru Usman, right? Great fighter. He's like on that pound for pound list for the UFC. His base pay might be 2 million for a fight, right? So you look at Kamaru and you're like, damn, this guy's a badass. He's, one of the best in the world at his craft.
Yeah.
But not as many people that watch boxing are watching UFC. It's a relatively young sport in the sense that the promotion has only been around for what, maybe 20 years, and boxing has like well over a century of like, so that's why people are kind of pissed, and some of the fighters are kind of pissed, but it's gonna take time. In 80 years, I'm pretty sure some of these, if the UFC is still around, I'm pretty sure they're gonna be making, 10 million on a base pay, and you're gonna have guys that are the cash cows that are making, because you've seen guys like Connor do it. And so Dana's whole thing is like, the pay is gonna be there, but for the longest time the UFC was they were in the hole as far as like money that they owed because the organization was so young. So just now are you starting to see revenue? And he has this whole spiel where he goes at De La Hoya and he talks about like Golden Boy fights, and he's like, dude, some of these Golden Boy fights, like, they're paying crap money to these young fighters. I think you'd get a kick out of it. But yeah, that's the thing. So some of those big guys like Masvidal, Covington, Khabib, they're not making, they're not even making as much as like a Billy Joe or a Caleb in a fight with Canelo. They're making, some of them are still making like 800,000 for a fight, or a million, 2 million tops, so that's the difference in how much the top guys make in boxing versus like MMA. And then the other guys make even less, like the younger contender type guys. So
See, but I think that's anywhere though. No, nobody else in boxing is making Canelo money.
right.
Like Caleb Plant wasn't making $10 million a fight to fight anybody else.
Right, yeah, True Axe or whoever, yeah.
Benavides is not making 5 million a fight. So I think that's anywhere. I think the problem, the thing is, because there is one promotional group, you're able to say, oh well,
It's all their fault. It's all
yeah,
fault.
yeah.
So that's the narrative. That's another thing that I'm gonna go back to this. Jake Paul trying to slander like that's one of his little, I don't believe him, but his whole thing about going at Dana, he's like, oh, you underpay your fighters and this and this and that. And sure, he has done, he's doing wonders for like the female boxers as far as like the money that he gives them. But I don't trust him as far as like his actual intentions for the overall sport of boxing, and to go Dana like that. Jake Paul.
Oh, Jake Paul. Huh.
That's one of his spiels. Like he calls out Dana on like fighter pay and like benefits for the fighters. And Dana's whole thing is, well, if you have it all figured out, go and start your own, boxing promotion company or your own mixed, like, please do it, because there are other people that tried and they fail. The UFC just happens to be the guys that have done a well enough job so far, as we can see. So, but yeah, that's one of the things, that's like the narrative that people push, that the top guys in the UFC should be making like Canelo-esque money, and it's like, well,
that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
there's one Canelo. That's it.
Yeah,
Errol Spence isn't making Canelo money either.
Yeah,
that's weird. That's a weird thing. Let's do some just rest of the year, playing out the rest of the year type of stuff before we jump off. Which fight that has been set? So this is the fights that we know about so far. Which one are you the most excited for?
Man, I mean, how we know Chocolatito, is that one like a finalized, like they have a date for it, or they know they're gonna have a fight?
No, that one is set. I thought
a date.
see.
Yeah, I think that might be the one because I don't know of anything else that's like solidified. You know, 'cause I keep forgetting it's still only January, but let's see,
Yeah, March 5th.
March 5th. I think I'm gonna have to go with that one by default. I don't know of anything else that's like in the books. They got the time and location, the tickets on sale. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I that one's the one that I'm excited for too the most, but I think partly because by default. It's hard to get excited for a fight that we don't know about.
Right. If I had to choose one that wasn't like it's kind of loosey goosey, I would
Yeah.
say Ryan Garcia fights next.
Mm,
Because I want to know. Um, I want to open the box and all right, what's in there, man? I got to see what's going on, and I think that fight is going to tell us so much about what's been going on with him the past, the 6 months, whatever it is,
yeah.
well over a year. But yeah. So whoever he fights, there's reports of him fighting this Filipino guy, this Filipino boxer, and then this other guy named Rodriguez. So the two, but you know how boxing is. Ryan's already denied that those are the guys, but whoever he fights, that's what I want to see, and I think it's they're aiming for April. I'm assuming that's the month that I saw thrown out there.
Yeah, that's the guy I'm excited to see fight as well. Because I want to know A, where he's at mentally.
Mm-hmm.
B, supposedly the hand thing was like a giant success, according to him. So I'm just interested. I'm interested to see what is it gonna look like. What is he like? I don't know. It's hard to, especially in the beginning of your career. It's really hard to see the fire kind of come and go, which is what you see from him.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. That's very interesting. I want to know like where he's gonna stand, and what is he gonna look like come
Come April or whenever
yeah,
it is that he
whenever it is
decides
that
to
he
fight.
decides to
Yeah,
fight. Um,
that's the one. I honestly I wouldn't even say like excited. I would say I'm like a little like nervous slash anxious. I'm just like, all right, well, what's the
yeah,
plan here for you and your team? And um, I also like with those like comments from Canelo, it's like, are you in good standing with Eddie? Like, what's
yeah,
you've been putting in the road work. So I would say that's the one I'm probably most anxious slash eager to see where he's at. Um,
yeah,
and then yeah, because everything else is kind of like, I mean, my buddy was asking me about Cambosos today. Um, I think I can't remember who, but he said that someone said that Cambosos won't be able to compete with the other lightweights. Um, I'm like, well, I mean, we didn't expect him to do anything against Lopez, and well, how do you feel about the Teofimo like reports that he was like had some kind of like the sickness going into the fight? Like what we never talked about this.
tough luck. You made us wait so long.
Right.
Whatever, dude. Like you
I,
went in there and the thing is, Delfimo for me, I don't want to hear any excuses from you. I don't want to hear any of that. Whether you were too big, whether you should have moved, I don't care because to me, you didn't boxing. To me, in boxing, I you get what you deserve.
oh.
You treated Lomachenko. You wanted to know nothing about his shoulder. You wanted to know nothing. You acted like you knocked him out. You acted like you totally destroyed Lomachenko and he was not even in your class. And you refused to give him a rematch, even though I blame that on Lomachenko and his team for being idiots. But anyway, that's another conversation. You don't then get to pee the bed against Cambosos, look awful, and then look okay at the end, I guess. But you got beat in a fight that you promoted, that you hyped up, that you like couldn't get somebody to buy. Like it was so ridiculous. We finally get it, and you lose, and you're gonna immediately start making excuses. Nah, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to
Oh,
hear it.
yes.
So
The
to me,
oh,
it's just you can say whatever you want. You struggled with this, you struggled with that, whatever. Cambosos didn't see his family for months as well. So I mean, everybody has a
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Suck it up, get over it. If you were the champion, you would have won, and you could have vacated the belts and moved on. Now you're forced to. So I don't buy this any of the of
The excuses. There's so many of
yeah,
them.
I'm not buying any of them. You lost, suck it up. Cambosos was the better guy that night. Is Cambosos going to be successful? I
Who
don't
knows?
know.
Who
Yeah,
knows?
I don't know. He might get destroyed by Haney and lose all his titles, and that's it. We don't know that, but I know that I don't want to hear him. I don't want to hear Delfimo give me excuses when he didn't want to accept anything from
Lomachenko.
Lomachenko.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
I don't want to hear it. And I'm not even a Lomachenko stand like that, but I just it just was such a bad to me. He after that Lomachenko fight, I was out on Delfimo because I was just like, dude, you didn't. I mean, you
you didn't
won,
win the way
but
you thought you did.
yeah, are we talking about the same fight? Like Lomachenko turned it on at the end. Anytime he would talk about like, yeah, I won, I showed him out, I'm just like, are we like, what are you
Did you really though? Yeah, yeah.
I'm just like, what? Like, what fight? What do you and obviously if you didn't watch the fight, because I have a cousin who like didn't watch, I don't think he watched the fight, but he's like a huge Dale guy. And he was like,
Oh,
yeah, well, I'm like, did you watch the fight though? Like, he did win. I'm not saying like don't go out say it's like me parading, be like, yeah, Canelo destroyed Triple G. Like, well, I mean,
it's a good hard fight. Yeah.
yeah, I think he won both. I see the arguments to those that say Canelo lost one, drew one. I think I've watched those fights like 10 times each.
Yeah.
I think Canelo won all of them, and I can, watch it with people and kind of explain why I think he won. But I'm not walking around saying, yeah, Canelo totally put Triple G in his place. Like,
Yeah.
that's weird. When Canelo acts like that, I'm just like, I don't know, bro. I don't know if this is the guy that you want to like be like, no, I put that behind me. Like, I don't know. There's enough questions in there where I think you should have fought him 2 years ago. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
and just get all the questions out of the way. It's like Andre Ward and Kovalev. He fought
Yeah.
him the second time. He beat him the second time, and all the questions people had of the first fight were kind of cleared away because he definitively beat him.
Yeah.
And and so to me, I'm out on Theo after that, and just his whole thing since then. I roll my eyes. I read it on Twitter, and I'm just like, whatever, dude. Like, whatever.
I'd like to clarify that I was never on that tail train. Just so
Yeah, if you're a Theo stan, I apologize.
I regret nothing. Yeah, man, it's kind of sad. Like this, like, did you see some of the interviews like with Eddie talking about how they were before the fight and then after the fight? Dude, I'm getting calls and like texts and voicemails from Senior, and he's like trying to rip me apart because of what happened. It's like, dude, your son didn't perform. Like, what does that have to do with me? Like,
yeah, I just put it together.
I
It
yeah,
makes no sense that whole. You know what I miss? I miss when losing was okay. I don't watch the UFC like that. I watch here
a
and
fight.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah, like I my knowledge of the UFC is very, very. I wouldn't even call it basic. Um, but I do like that in the UFC losing is okay, and I miss that about boxing. I miss when losing was just, hey, you fought a great fighter. Guess what? Somebody's gonna lose. That's what happens. But it doesn't mean that you suck and would never have to see you again. Like, you just come back because you lost. And I just hate that in this new place, because this is fairly new. When De La Hoya was fighting, when even when Cesar Chavez like was fighting, Cesar Chavez isn't doesn't get ripped because he lost to De La Hoya. No one's like, oh yeah, he was good, but he lost to De La Hoya, so he sucks. Like, I just think whenever you're playing anything, any competitive sport, fight, somebody's gonna lose. But just because you lose, it doesn't mean you suck and you should never do it again. And I think in boxing, everyone's so afraid to lose that when they lose, they act like poor sports. They act terrible. That's why, honestly, it's why I love Joshua so much. Because when the two times he's lost, and we've talked about it, like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
didn't like how he's just kind of like, oh well, I lost. But I love that because to him, it's not. Well, it's like, well, I'm gonna be back. Like he beat me. Like his whole thing on Andy Ruiz, where he
yeah.
didn't try to dump on him. He didn't try to say,
He's like,
well,
tonight, tonight's
I
the
had
night.
never seen him, and it's I kind of took a risk because I didn't know what to expect, and but he just, hey, this is his night. I'm
It's his
gonna
night.
let him enjoy his night. I just like, this is awesome because that's what it needs to be. And UFC, somebody loses, it's not like, oh, that's it. We're never going to see McGregor again. That, well, we'll see how he bounces back. And in the sport of boxing, there is no moment to bounce back. There's none of it. And I hate that because Muhammad Ali has losses in his record. He does. He's, Tyson, who's now his career looks differently because he's so beloved now. But Tyson at the end was a train wreck. But we don't remember that Tyson. We don't remember the Tyson who bit Holyfield out of frustration because he was getting smacked around the ring. We don't remember that. We remember the guy who bounced back. He would lose and he would bounce back. And I hate that in the sport of boxing, every loss has to come with its own set of excuses. All of them. You can't just lose because the
Well, he was the better man tonight.
yeah, like
Yeah.
the Canelo Mayweather thing, when people like, oh, like, yeah, Mayweather was a better guy. That's it. That's why he won. But Mayweather, 30 years, not 30 years later, but a decade later, he's still talking about how he was easy work. Like, yeah, you fought the youngest Canelo.
We haven't even talked about that,
Like,
man.
yeah,
Oh,
of course that was easy work. Canelo fighting it's Canelo beating
you
who's
fought a
like
kid.
it's Canelo beating like a young Shakur Stevenson right now. And then Shakur Stevenson in like 7 years.
Becomes that guy.
Yeah. And then he's like, well, yeah, I beat him and he was easy work. Well, yeah, you fought the baby Shakur Stevenson. It
With a
just
catch
makes
weight. Yeah.
it just makes no sense, like this whole thing. But it stems from what you see from Theo, what you see from all these dudes that lose, and then there's an immediate pile of excuses as opposed to, hey, he won, he beat me. That's what happens. You're gonna win some, you're gonna lose some, but you just gotta keep going. And I just hate that losing is so detrimental now, because it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be in a sport where somebody can knock you out. So
I'm reminded of have you seen Friday? I'm sure you've
yeah,
seen Friday.
yeah, of course.
You know this scene when like Ice Cube's character, like his dad catches him with the gun,
Mm-hmm.
and John Witherspoon, he's just like, hey, like this, like he points at his fist and this is all we needed back in my day, man. He's like, you win some, you lose some, but you live to fight another day.
Yeah.
And with these, like, man, it's just, who's a good example of that? Because people kind of wrote him off for a while, but like Chocolatito, man, because he was like
Mm-hmm.
riding that train, and then he lost some fights, and I remember people were like, oh, he's done, bro. That's it. He's too old now. This and you know, sure, was he did he maybe deserve to win that last fight with Estrada? Yeah, he probably did. But
Of course he did.
he's gonna take the next fight, and since those initial losses, he's taken those fights and he's worked his
Yeah.
way back. And
Nonito Nonair is another guy.
yeah, man, and in the UFC, there's tons, bro. There are guys that have like 13. Like Masvidal, he's got tons of losses, but the guy he's like, I love to fight, man. He's like, I'm here to, put skulls on canvases and, like collect the check. He's like, I like fighting. That's just, and yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say some of these boxers, like they're very like diva-esque. I'm just like, oh, bro, really? Like, come on, man. I thought you were a fighter, bro. Like come on, man,
Yeah, that's but I think that's how Mayweather changed the sport. Because that's where that stems from. He's the one that started the whole I'm undefeated. There's no what's the thing they do say all the time? There's no blueprint. There's no blueprint to fight to beat me. And I just think like that's so new. Like that, like all the dudes that came out, and it's why he does the TBE thing, because nobody
Yeah.
ever beat me. But it's like, man, like Sugar Ray Robinson lost. The beauty of the Duran and
The
Sugar
the
and
bounce
Sugar Ray
back, yeah.
is he gets beat the first fight and he comes back the second one, and that's what makes Noma so amazing.
Yeah.
It's not that it was the second fight. The first fight, just Duran beats him, and it was a great fight. The second one, he makes him no mas. That's it. And I just you don't get that in the sport anymore because one loss and that's it. I never want to see this guy again, and I hate that. I just hate that. There's no bounce back. Everyone has an excuse, and I don't want to hear them. I really don't. I just
Yeah.
I'm sick of them. Just act like Joshua. Win with class, lose with class,
Man.
and then just keep it moving. Fight the next guy, and just. But for Theo to have all these things, for him to say, "Oh, I'm gonna unify," this division, and I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, bro, just do it because he talks too much and does too little
Oh yeah.
for my liking at least.
I agree. I concur. Man.
Let's do which fighter or which boxer has the most to prove this year.
Ooh. I mean, I already mentioned his name, but I think it's Ryan, man.
Mm.
I think the Wolves are kind of starting like this. They're small in the blood, and they're just like, "Are you that guy? Like, I don't know if you are." And yeah, it's a combination of like the inactivity, the
Yeah.
statements from Canelo, um, and then aside from Luke, like the lack of super high level competition, obviously. But yeah, because he it's almost like he has to work his way back up from, I don't want to say zero, but I can't imagine they're gonna let him take a super difficult fight. Like I was thinking about it today, and I was like, because one of the guys that they're saying he's supposed to fight, I think he's like 34, and I'm like, oh, that guy's old. That'll be, if he takes the fight, that should be a
Yeah,
good,
good
nice little
tune-up
fight.
fight.
And then I thought, for some reason, like Linares popped into my head, and I was like, oh, what do you fight Linares? And I was like,
He might be too dangerous.
yeah, and I was like, it's funny, but that might be too dangerous. Even though Linares is like what, like 36, but I'm like, that might be too dangerous, man. I'm just like, this is what my mind gravitates to when I think about Garcia. I'm like, are the fights just too dangerous right now for him to take?
Yeah.
And so he's got to take some of those tune-up fights. I don't know, maybe two. I don't know. And then we can see him, like even Cruz, like just fighting Cruz. I'm like, is Cruz gonna be? I don't know, man. So
Yeah.
I think he has to win back the. I would say like the hardcore boxing fans. He's got to earn back their trust, and because obviously his all the people that love him like on the gram, they're gonna love him no matter what. For me, I think that's the guy with the
I
most
think
proof.
that's the right answer. I think Garcia is the right answer because anybody else, I mean,
Everybody's been somewhat active.
yeah, and everybody, we kind of know what we're getting. I think, Haney is good, but I think I don't think he's gonna be super duper star guy.
Yeah.
Cambosos, I think, I don't know. I mean, I think he won the fight of his life. I don't know if I mean, I guess I mean I don't, but I don't think he has a lot to prove. I think Dale's gonna
He's
get a
already
big
proven more than we ever thought he was.
exactly. Dale's gonna get a pass because he's he lost and he's gonna move divisions. Joshua, I don't think he has an I just think he's an established dude that even if he loses to Usyk again, he can fight Wilder and go on the
Yeah.
route. I think we all for the most part, Fury is the undisputed number one guy. I don't think there's any question now. Canelo, there's nothing for him to prove.
Yeah.
The Charlos, I don't think we know them enough to think that he has to prove anything. Benavidez, the same thing. Caleb Plant, I think, came out smelling like roses after the Canelo fight. So anything he does now, he has more support behind him. So I don't think he has a lot to prove now. Garcia is the only answer that I think. There's nobody else. Earl Spence, I don't think so. He's the only guy. He's the only guy that has something to prove. So I think Garcia is the name. He's the name that needs to prove he is who, our guy Sammy thinks he is.
Yeah, kind of a victim of his own hype, if you will. Like all these, man, remember when they would say like next De La Hoya, like next Canelo, and bro, people would like people say like Justin Bieber fans are they're ready to put your head on a. It's like that's how Garcia fans are. Like if you say anything bad, they're there like pitchforks and torches. Like they're just like ready to go. And I'm like, but seeing now, I'm like, I wasn't that crazy to think these things about him, man. I mean, we haven't gotten much from him. And
well, think how much has happened since he entered the fight on the throne.
Yeah,
like if somebody would have told me, hey, look, he's gonna fight this fight, and after that, he's pretty much gonna go unseen for like the next 2 years, I would have been like, no way. You don't come in on a throne and then disappear. And that's
like that.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Because after that fight, he got knocked out. He got knocked down. Sorry. He wins. But it was one of those like, hey, the dude showed some heart. He went down, he responded. Okay.
Like great, where are we going now? And it's like we're stuck in the same
and
spot.
we just haven't seen, and I just think that's super crazy because he has ring rust is a real thing. And he's young enough, so maybe it won't affect him like that. But you take a break because of the mental issues,
mental health, yeah.
Man, that's different than just like, hey,
regular ring rust,
yeah, that's regular than I messed up my knee, I need to get it healed. That's anything can trigger it at any moment.
It's a different kind of wound.
Some of these press conferences are not going to be pretty. So what if somebody says something in those press conferences that triggers, like, I don't know. But I think the right answer is Ryan Garcia for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Did you see that Rolly was like he won his case?
I did.
Yeah. That guy is funny, man. He's
yeah.
I don't know if he could fight well, but I'm like, he's a funny guy.
Yeah, he's at least entertaining, at least.
Yeah.
Anything else we haven't covered? Anything else we need?
I don't know. I think that's probably it, boxing wise. Were you really hurt by the Staples Center thing, Jeremy?
Not hurt. I was just, I get it, money, but it's one of those like it's a weird like. My whole life it's called Staples Center. I think the stadium was built in 2000, so I was 9 years old or so when it opened. So it's been Staples. It's going to be Staples Center forever. It's like the Bronco Stadium, Mile High Stadium. It's not Mile High Stadium. It's some like athletic random name. but it's always going to be Mile High Stadium. And I'm sure it's coming where you're going to get the Dodger Stadium changed to some rando, um, vegan
Right. Yeah. Like, oh, like welcome to Wells
Impossible
Fargo
Stadium,
athletic
whatever.
facilities. Like what? Yeah.
It's always going to be Dodger Stadium, but it was just weird. It was such a weird. I work by Staples Center, so I see it every time I go to work, and I just think like, that's so weird. The whole crypto thing,
Yeah.
like it's like a scene from a movie where like crypto's like there's enough money in crypto now where they're like there's
It's a thing. You're
stadiums.
like, what? Like, yeah.
So yeah, that was weird. That was a weird thing.
Yeah.
Weird thing for sure. I just I don't think it's ever gonna be crypto to me, but we'll see. We'll
The
see.
funny thing is that it's gonna be that to some other kid, because
Yeah, exactly.
like I was like online, and obviously a huge chunk of people are like they're up in arms. They're like, what is ridiculous? And then
Mm-hmm.
someone, I don't know what, I don't remember who it was, but someone was like, yo, like, do you know where like the Lakers used to play before Staples Center? It was like the Forum,
Yeah, the
right?
forum.
And it had such a majestic name. It was like the Lakers, and I was just like, damn, that I was thinking to myself, I was like, that sounds pretty cool. I can imagine that if I was a kid watching the Lakers there with my dad, and then this like Staples Center thing comes along, I'd probably be the same way. I'd probably be like giving them the bird, like, oh, that's the Lakers play out of the Forum, they don't play out of Staples Center, and it's like the generational thing
See,
came
but
into
that's a
play.
new stadium. This is like it's not like they changed the the name. So
But the effect's still the same. It's like,
no, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
But when it happened, like the Lakers were moving to downtown, it was like one of those like we everybody understood they're going from Inglewood to downtown LA, but to like this, like it's not like they went from the Forum to like the Nokia Center or whatever. So it's interesting, but yeah, you're right. To my little brother, just like what crypto that crypto stadium. But
yeah,
granted, but I'm sure they're gonna have to tear it down and build a new one.
eventually.
Yeah, so it's not even gonna matter. It's
Yeah,
not even
it
gonna
got me
matter.
thinking about like the silly names for the state, like MetLife, like Gillette. I'm like, oh, all these names are stupid, but we just accept them as like because of nostalgia,
Yeah, or the
like what?
one name, at Gillette. They're playing at Gillette today. Oh, okay. So it just
Yeah.
it just it makes sense. The other one that I
Right.
used to remember a lot because the Lakers and Kings used to play a lot was Arco Arena. Now it's called some
Mm.
like ridiculous name. But the other, I was like, man, I remember Arco Arena. That was like so like prominent back in the day.
Oh, okay. So real quick, I gotta ask if this is true. So my brother told me that he vividly remembers the moment when I didn't know this, but you were a Kings fan before.
Oh man, yeah.
Here we go. Yeah, and he was like, dude, we were at church, and Germ like came up to us and he's like, guys, like you made an announcement. Like I've made the
I made
decision.
an announcement.
Like I've been converted to the Church of the Lakers. Like,
uh, yeah, it was.
that's what he told me.
Look, I was young and stupid. I wanted to be different, and but yeah. But then I made the announcement, and everybody accepted me with open arms. So it was fine. It was. I've put that behind me, and much to just the past is the past, and I'm a new
Yeah.
person.
Yeah, man. Because we were gonna during the Rams and Niners game. We were like when I sent that tweet about my brother, he was like, hey, what if if the Rams win, I can send Jerm a picture of like me holding up crap, I don't know what he had a Rams jersey liner that he was gonna sell, and he was like, I should send a picture to Germ, and then like the caption would be like, yo, I got like a Rams fan application for you, bro, like if you want to jump ship. And then he told me this story about like the Kings and Lakers thing. He's like, dude, he already did that, he converted, so
No, you see, but that was so different because that was the Kings was such a like it was when it was supposedly cool to hate like the Lakers and hate like the local team. but I would watch like every Laker game, and I was supposedly like the biggest hater, and I like watch all their games,
Yeah.
like because I live in LA, so all the radio stations they talk about the Lakers.
Lakers.
I knew everything about the Lakers, and then one day, so I was watching. It was the what was it? It was like the '06 season, so 2006. Um, was it 2006? Yeah, 2006. And I just was like, man, like I realized like I really like this team, but I didn't say anything. And then a few months later, I was like, hey, you know what? I like the Lakers because I would just that's all I would talk about.
Yeah.
With so it was that was different with the Rams. I've grown up hating the Rams my whole life. My whole life. I've been a 49er fan since 1995.
Since you saw Steve Young. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
Steve
told me
Young.
that.
Steve
Yeah.
Young was my first love. So I have loved the 49ers since then. The Rams have been our rivals since then. I've hated them forever. So when they moved, to me, it was like they moved here like what 4 years ago, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, like man, this is like 20 years of hate. Not even like dislike. It's not even like, because the Cardinals, I don't hate them. It's just like, whatever. It's the Cardinals. This is like some hate. I want bad things to happen to them. I want them to lose every game.
Yeah.
This is like some rivalry stuff. This isn't like, the Rams. That's right. The Rams. I can't stand that team. So um that's never gonna happen. The Lakers was such a unique circumstance because that's all I would consume. In football is different because the Niners were on TV all the time. So
Right. And I mean,
and there was
I
no
know
football team. There was no football
yeah, I
team
was about
here.
to say, like, the Raiders were there for a while, then they left, and there was pretty much no one.
Yeah, there was no and does he still support the Packers?
I'm glad you brought that up. That's great. That's a
Because he
great
was a
question.
big cheesehead guy. He gave me a Jerry
Now
Rice
he's not.
jersey.
Now he's not, dude.
No way.
Yeah, bro. I always give him crap whenever the Packers are on. I'm always like, "Isn't that your boy? Like Rogers, bro? Come
Your
on, you know."
boy.
And he's like, "Nah, I'm with the Rams now." And then he's just like he's like my dad, dude. My dad supports like 5 teams. Like my dad's that guy. I'm sorry to say that, but he he roots for so he has a Raiders cap,
Okay.
and then he's like, well, the Chargers are in LA, and I'm like, what? And then the Rams too, because my brother got him a Aaron Donald jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, so Raiders, Chargers, Cowboys, and then Rams. The Raiders, because the Raiders were in LA when
Right.
so he watched like Bo Jackson, Marcus Allen. I think he saw like Jim Plunkett, like all those, Howie Long, all those legends. He saw all those guys play. So the Raiders have like a special place in his heart. And then now, modern times, oh well, the Rams and Chargers are here. He's like, all right, and then we have family in Dallas, so he's like, yeah, the Cowboys, and I'm like, that's not how this works. Like, so yeah, so my brother jumped ship with the Packers, and I was like,
No
bruh.
way. He was a
And
big Packer fan
bro,
too.
so I really I dislike the Rams just because when I was in high school, there was no team in LA. Also, that's why I stuck with the Pats, because the Pats were talked about a lot when I was a kid, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And then I could name the number of legit Rams fans that I knew on maybe one hand. One of them was my coach in high school, and one of them was my running back. They were like diehard Rams fans.
St. Louis Rams fans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my coach, he was older. I think he might have remembered when they were in LA before.
No, right, but it was like the St. Louis Rams at the
Right,
time.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, and then after high school, the Rams come to LA, and I had like teammates that like they used to be Jets fans, Broncos fans, any random team.
Yeah.
And then when the Rams came to town, they were like, "Oh, well, LA's got a football team now, so I'm gonna support the Rams." And now they're like die hard, and I'm like, where's the loyalty here?
Well, they die easy. Rams fans die very easy because they don't care about the Rams. Because that game on Sunday, your team is playing for the division. You're playing against your division rival, and it was red.
It was red.
It was red. And Matthew Stafford's wife came out and said how they had to do a silent count in their own stadium. Joe Buck during the game was like, look, listen to this crowd when the 49ers said it was like a pro 49er crowd. So I see the same thing. Everyone, supposedly now is a Ram fan. I'm like, man, you started liking the Rams a day ago. Settle down, calm down before you claim you're this diehard. Because look, when they lost the Super Bowl to the Pats, nobody cared. Everybody kept them moving. It didn't matter. I still cannot talk about the 49ers losing to the Ravens. Go on Twitter, go on 49er Twitter and bring up the Chiefs Super Bowl or the Ravens Super Bowl. It's just a very dark place. So these guys are like, oh yeah, well, we made a Super Bowl a few years ago. I don't even bring up that we played the Chiefs in the Super Bowl 2 years ago because it just hurts. It's not even an accomplishment. It just pains. It just pain. All I know is pain. So
I must admit, I confess, Germ, whenever the Niners play, purely out of spite, I'm happy when they lose.
Oh,
yeah,
why?
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know what it is.
Out of spite for who?
I think for you, because I'll see you on Twitter, just your rants and raves, and I think part of it also stems from the fact that I know you don't like the Seahawks very much.
Oh my God, I hate the Seahawks.
And I know you don't like Russell Wilson, and I love Russell Wilson.
See, I don't like Russell Wilson because of he has the Seattle stink.
But that's the thing. So it kind of translated I remember seeing the Seahawks and the Niners playing, some tough battles a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I remember once we were at Renee's house and you were kind of bad mouthing Russell Wilson a little bit, and I was just like, the guy's 5'10", bro. Let him be. He's playing well, And so whenever I'll see you on Twitter, either cursing the Niners or praising them, I'm just like, serves them right, And then so whenever the Rams and Niners play each other, I'm always like, I don't even want to tie. Is there any way that both teams can lose the game? That's all I want. I that's just that's the the little dark side of myself. but I'm always like,
Yeah, when it comes to Seattle, when it comes to the Cowboys, when it comes to the Rams, just this embedded hate. It is what it is. But I have this deep love for Tom Brady. So for a long time, it was funny because people thought
you were a Pats fan.
Yeah, people thought I was a Pats fan. But it was the Niners weren't any good, and I would, if you kept my Twitter, I was always tweeting about the 49ers even when we sucked. But then the Niners weren't playing in January, and Tom Brady was. So I just would root for Tom Brady. It wasn't even a Pats thing. It was a Brady. I just want to see Brady win. And to the point, I had a friend. He went to Boston, and he brought me Patriot socks. And nice. I was just like, "Oh, cool, Patriot socks." Like, all right. I've never worn them. I have them here somewhere, and they're still in the wrapper.
Yeah.
And one day he's like, "Hey, how'd you like those Patriot socks?" And I was just like, I mean, they're cool.
They look great in my drawer, bro.
He's like, "Are they comfortable?" And I was like, "Look, I'll be honest with you. I'm never gonna wear those." He's like, "What? Why?" I don't like the Patriots. Wait, what? Aren't you always talking about Tom Brady? Yeah, I like Tom Brady. I'm a 49er fan. And I was like, I like the Red Sox. You could have brought me a Red Sox shirt or something. Or a keychain, a Boston keychain. But that's what it was for a long time. People thought I was a Pats fan because of my deep love for Tom Brady. So when they beat the Seahawks and when Russell Wilson threw that interception, it was
you were like,
It was amazing. It was like, here, you got to stick it to Russell Wilson for making the dumb decision. Tom Brady won another one. Pete Carroll just had to have the dumb look on his face. Richard Sherman with the look of just disaster. It was perfect. It was so amazing. It wasn't amazing when they won the Super Bowl versus the Broncos because I was just super angry that whole game. But um, yeah,
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, that was great. I mean, well, to watch the game from like a not having a favorite, I was like, damn, they're beating the crap out of him, you know. Um, but yeah, so you wouldn't wear a Tom Brady jersey ever, either Bucks or Pats.
no, but I would get one just for the like I would hang it up on my wall, you know, like a
Okay, all right, yeah, okay, all right, cool,
historical type of
cool.
stuff.
So you gotta
But I wouldn't wear one. I
if you
wouldn't.
ever, if you ever want to try it out, bro, I got a little, yeah, and it's got my name on it as well, and the little stitched. Oh, yeah, okay, there we go.
Like
Yeah.
this is what we're riding with. We got the Cowboys this week. This is what we're
All
riding with
right.
right here. This
No,
is it.
I used to have a Niners.
You want to sleep comfortable. You know, you just lay on this side and you just feel the power. Just feel the. You're in Paso Robles. Isn't Paso Robles like a 49er town?
Yeah, well, yeah, there's a lot of San Francisco Giants fans, like
Okay.
the baseball side of things.
Yeah.
Um, I've seen people do talk about the Niners, but people also talk about there's a lot of old Raider fans up here, couple like old timers that like the Rams. Um, but yeah, I'll wear a Dodger cap sometimes, like when I'm out playing music, and I've gotten more compliments from, not compliments, but Giants fans will come and talk to me because of my Dodger cap more than I get like love from Dodger fans.
Really?
Yeah, I was playing once, and this guy comes up. It was at I play at a hotel every week, and there's this dinner party, and this guy comes up and he tips us, and he's like, "Man," he's like, "I love everything you guys are doing except for that hat your friends got on." And I was like, "What the heck?" But I always get little comments like that. Yeah.
That's a, so. What is the sports radio up there? Like, who's the local team?
Gosh, I wouldn't even know, man. I don't listen to the radio much, and the radio's
Okay.
pretty it's pretty trash. Like I know how like in LA, like do you guys still have like 94.7 The Wave, like smooth
Yeah.
jazz? I have nothing like that up here, so I can't. It's on the radio. It's all either like classic rock, country, or just like pop, like pop. But I'm always looking for like I'm like, is there any kind of like R&B, like alternative rock, and it's pretty crazy. But yeah,
So,
as far as like sports, too, I haven't looked into it. But
like, who's the team that gets shown every like? Who's the local team like on Channel 11 for the Fox?
the Niners do get shown a lot. The
Okay.
Rams too. I think Niners and Rams games are always on.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, a couple Raider games too. But but yeah, man. So yeah, I just had to get that off my chest about the Niners, man, because every time they play, I'm always like,
I can't believe you. I can't
yeah,
believe my
yeah.
Russ.
You never would have expected that, huh? I'm just over here like plotting away, like
Oh
the
my
demise
gosh.
of
You're over here just like fist pumping every time something
like
bad happens to me.
when they played the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I was playing somewhere and I had to drive home to see the end of the game.
Oh man.
Chiefs had secured it. I was just like, yes, I can eat in peace now. Like just so
But why? What just my Russell Wilson hate just affects you that much? I don't understand.
I don't know. I think it's because like I'll see you rant about like the soccer stuff,
Yeah.
and then remember that video you posted of yourself like kind of like punching like the cushion, like because
Yeah.
so seeing you upset about the sports teams, and for some reason it just gives me
It
joy.
just
So
makes
with
it
the Niners,
okay. So you just root just for the world to burn around me.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly,
I
exactly.
get you. I get you. I get you.
No, but
So
it's
so
I
my
just
pain brings you happiness.
exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Oh man, yeah, that was good. That was good, bro. What about AB?
What a crazy guy, huh? What
Yeah,
a
man.
nut job.
I don't. You see that interview we did? Like, you tweeted about the Brady thing, but
Yeah.
man,
What a nut job. Just like,
God, it's crazy.
yeah, I don't know. I don't get it.
So do you think it was the incentives thing or the ankle thing or like what's your take?
I think it's the incentives thing
And
because
the targeting
there's
too, like the
yeah,
like
because
Gronk getting more catches.
there's a story that came out that he looked at Brady and was like, "Oh, so you know you're gonna go with your boy today." Speaking of Gronkowski,
Yeah,
and Brady didn't like that one bit.
man.
So I think it's that for sure. I think it was the incentives thing. Because
Yeah.
there's no coach that would like risk it. There's especially
Right.
to the stature of Bruce Arians that's gonna be like, no, you're not really injured. Go in. Like, and if you're really that hurt, like you would go to the trainer yourself.
Right. And I think they were saying that if you were actually hurt, like some of the trainers would have been like they wouldn't have cleared you
Yeah,
and you were
exactly.
clear. Yeah.
So it just, but you know, he's super, you know, self-centered,
Yeah.
all about himself, and it just, you know, I tweeted how he just showed that Brady's all about winning because the dude stuck his neck out for AB, not because AB is a great human being, but you know, just Brady's all about winning.
Winning
So
games, yeah.
and so yeah, that was such a weird, that was such a crazy thing. I was watching, and I was like, dude, is this guy, is this for real? Like I thought it was a fan, like who had just like entered the game. Like, oh, so,
Yeah.
and then it was like, wait, that's Antonio Brown. Like it was so weird, such a weird thing. How do you feel about your Pats going into the Bills?
I just saw one of the O linemen was he's out for the game. So I don't know. Mac looked, he had some nice little flashes this season, but I don't know, against Buffalo and with an O lineman out, I I don't expect them to do much because they were kind of all over the place this season as far as like when they looked really on and when they looked kind of just like any other NFL team.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel good about them moving forward, like in the big picture, I guess, with Mac. Um, but yeah, I just want to see. I think Rogers might get that second ring.
No,
Why
no,
not? Come on.
their team is super flawed, such a flawed team.
So who thinks going to the Super Bowl?
The Bucks.
You and the Bucks. Yeah.
I still try. I think it's gonna be Bucks Chiefs
Oh,
again,
again.
again. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Um, I believe a lot in the 49ers. I'm
Oh, I know you
very,
do, Germ. I know you do.
I'm very. What does Michael Scott say? I am a little stitious. So I just don't like to predict anything. That's why you'll never read me saying the 49ers are going to win today. Just this is not my style. I like to freak out in the moment, go through all the motions, celebrate at the end.
Put Lance in, bro. When I saw that tweet, I was dying, bro.
Oh man, Jimmy. I love Jimmy. I've been on Jimmy's, you know,
Since
side
day
from the
one.
beginning. He just was so bad in that game that I just was like, bro, this is. And then that first that like the way he threw it, he just it was
Yeah.
so weird against the Rams. I mean, he pulled it together and was great, but I just like, dude, the guy that like he has a ruptured ligament in his throwing hand. Like, I don't know if this is and we were losing 17-0. So if you go back and read that tweet, just know the context of it. We were down 17-0 and Jimmy had just thrown a pass like this. Like if you're watching this on YouTube, like this is how we threw it. Like I just what are we doing here? Our playoffs lives are in our playoffs hopes are in the balance and our quarterback can't throw a football. This is not good.
You know what it is with you and the Niners? I think I enjoy reading your tweets when they're doing bad than I do when they're doing
You're
well.
just the worst person on the planet, you know?
I like how
You're
fired
just a
up you
terrible
get when
person.
when you tweeted when you were like oh, our only hope is Atlanta. I was just like, damn. was like, like I just, or like Cruz Azul. If you cheat about like Cruz Azul, no, it's just
Oh,
like,
Cruz Azul. That's just
so,
like an eternal, like, nut nut punch. They just kick me in the balls every time. Just like them, the Mexican national team,
oh yeah, oh.
Manchester United is just like an eternal like ball kick. It's just I'm just getting kicked in the balls left and right all the time. Um, that's all I know. It gets to a point where it's just numb. So Cruz Azul, I'm numb now. It's just like what.
Like it is what it is.
Yeah.
Like,
This is the life I chose, and this is it. With the Mexican national team, I this is a life that was given to me. I was born in Mexico.
did they not qualify for the World Cup?
We still don't know. They're third place,
But they're
though,
like third
behind the U.S. and Canada. Can you believe the U.S. and Canada?
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. Anyway, but that's where I'm at. So yeah, I'm glad that my pain is at least bringing you some happiness.
It's entertaining.
Oh man. So with that, we'll definitely circle back once there's like more boxing stuff on the horizon. Now that I know your feelings towards me and my team, I wish you nothing but the worst of luck tomorrow against the Bills. I hope the Bills just trounce on you and I just hope it's a Josh Allen coordination game. You don't have Tom Brady on your team, so I could care less about the Pats. So I just hope Mac Jones looks lost and he looks scared and he's cold and he just has that look on his face. Although I wanted the 49ers to get Mac Jones, if you go back and read my tweets, I was all in.
Yeah.
If Mac Jones is a better pro than Trey Lance, which I think is what's going to happen. Just I was on that train from the beginning. But David, I'll see you next time. Take care of yourself.
Yes.
And everybody else, thank you for listening. You can rate, review, subscribe, and to keep listening to the Brew Thoughts podcast. Until next time, see you later.